Tim Rutledge says that getting rid of poor performers is almost as critical as keeping the strong ones. Tim is the publisher of Matinee Press, and he joins us now. Thank you for being here.
Evening, Bruce.
In such a strong economy, you are really focused on getting rid of poor performers. How come? Why is it so important?
It is important because, and it's a bit of a paradox in a way.
Yeah.
It's a retention strategy.
Aha.
I'm trying to get rid of certain people in order to keep others, because I want my good performers to get a very powerful message, and that is that I, as their manager, their supervisor, will not tolerate poor performance. Because if we're results-oriented, and that's the message I've been giving out, I need to demonstrate to those good people in a very tangible way that I will not tolerate marginal or poor performance. Once they get that message from me, the good ones will want to work for me. So that's the strategy.
Sounds like pruning a tree.
In a way, it is pruning a tree or weeding a garden.
Right.
If you want the flowers or the vegetables to grow, you need to take those weeds out.
Now, with the poor performance, you would assert that they already know, and they might even want to leave themselves. You're just giving them a bit of a push.
I think anybody who is a marginal or poor performer who is not making the grade knows that that is the case, and that they are not very happy in their own skin. And although it's a difficult thing to make the transition, they would welcome the change.
And they don't because? They don't do it themselves because?
Frequently, they're long-term employees. They've been with one employer for, say, 20 years. Their last job interview was 20 years ago. They may not have a resume at all. They may not know how to lead, in other words. And I know of at least one company, as a matter of fact, that has acknowledged that fact and instituted, resume workshops, interview skills training. Some employees, long service employees, took advantage of it. New lives for them.
Thanks for coming. Here's your hat and your coat. Now, in terms of the inertia that the employee might feel, what about the inertia on the employer's part? Because we all know the stories about a manager who's inherited a bunch of poor performers and does nothing for 6 months or even ever. Why does that happen? How do you overcome that inertia?
If you're a new manager, it's probably a good idea not to do a whole lot of that initially. You need to scout that territory out. But once you know who is performing and who is not performing, it's a managerial responsibility to keep those good people. And the way you do that is by demonstrating that you won't tolerate marginal or poor performance. It's a very, very powerful message either way. If I fail to deliver that message, I deliver the opposite. And that is that performance doesn't really matter around here. Results don't really matter around here. Your good people will leave.
Probation periods, performance evaluations, there are a number of structures that are kind of in the management playbook already. How can managers use them better?
Particularly, and I'm glad you mentioned probationary periods, because they've been around for a long time, but they tend not to have much of a life in a lot of organizations beyond something that's on the offer letter. After all, supervisors have invested a lot of time and effort in bringing a new person on board. They have a vested interest in that individual passing probation. And so frequently human resources says, hey, Charlie's probation is up and the supervisor's the most surprised person in the company.
Right.
This is not the way to run it. It's an opportunity for the employer to find out if they've made the right selection. It's also an opportunity for the new employee to decide whether or not they made the right selection and they are actually in the job that's right for them. What the supervisor needs to do is to manage the process. Typically, it's 90 days, three months. It can be more. But what the supervisor needs to do is to block out the times, say at the 1 month and at the 2 month periods. We're going to sit down, we're going to view progress against the objectives that we talked about on day 1 or day 2 or whenever it was. If the employee knows that those things are going to happen, that's a feeling of confidence for the employee, and also a knowledge that results will be monitored.
Very briefly before we go, how do you do this appropriately and effectively if you do decide that it's time to let go of some of the poor performers?
First of all, document the performance from day 1, the good stuff and the not so good stuff. If you haven't done that, you're really going to be hung out to dry. Secondly, involve if you're not an HR professional who's used to coaching on this, involve those folks. They will help you. That's part of your job. If you're in a unionized environment and you've documented this performance, they will help you also.
Very important. Tim, thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure.
Tim Rutledge, publisher of Matinee Press.